Well, as we mentioned, a lot going on at the Africa Climate Summit here in Nairobi this week, and the Pan-African Fund Managers Association was officially launched today in collaboration with FSD Africa. Now, the official launch of PAFMA took place during the Climate Summit in Nairobi, where the founding members signed an MOU together. Collectively, the associations oversee assets under management totaling over 70 billion US dollars. Now, the launch of PAFMA comes as the industry faces many challenges, including historically low savings rates, a scarcity of viable investment opportunities, and of course the escalating environmental risks which are currently confronting the continent. Well, let's find out more about some of this innovative financing from Mark Napier. He's the CEO of FSD Africa. He joins us now here in Nairobi. Now, of course, Mark, we have to highlight the fact that FSD is a specialist development agency. Your team of financial sector experts basically works alongside governments, business leaders, regulators, policymakers to design and build programs that, of course, make financial markets work better for Africa. So this summit has promised to set, in quotes, a new agenda for Africa's sustainable development. What are the priorities you hope to see addressed at this meeting? Let's start off with that.
Well, we're very interested in climate finance. We're a financial sector program, and we exist to help financial markets get more innovative and more competitive and more efficient. So we're particularly interested in the financial markets priorities that are being set here. And what we hope is first of all, that people being policymakers really realize the impact that investing in policy and regulation can have on the flows of capital into the kind of green projects that we want to see. So one of the priority areas that we would like to see much more focus on would be around policy and regulation and around building the capacity that's needed within governments to be able to handle, I think, the opportunity that's coming through from climate finance, where finance ministries in particular are going to need to raise their game in order to be able to capture this new opportunity. And what I mean by that is that when you think about green bonds, when you think about ESG, when you think about all sorts of technical issues to do with the way financial markets work in green financial markets, for the finance ministries to give leadership to that, they really need to scale up their own capacity as well. A lot is being done, and it's really positive to see that a lot's being done, but a lot more can be done. That's one thing. And I think the second thing I'd just like to emphasize is really
Well, can you still hear me, Mr. Napier? We lost you for a moment there.
I can still hear you, yes.
Okay, so please do go ahead.
One of the issues that people often highlight around that causes the lack of green finance in Africa is the lack of investable projects. And that's because there isn't enough money going into the development of projects at a very early stage. And so what we would like to see happen also is that donors and philanthropists recognize that there is an enormous value from investing in early stage deal preparation, so that we are effectively stimulating the demand for green finance and allowing new projects which create jobs to take root. And you can't guarantee things that don't already exist. And a lot of times people have really good ideas about what they want to do, whether it's in renewable energy or electric transport or those sorts of things. But actually getting that concept out of people's heads and into the format where an investor can actually invest is actually a really long-term job, and it can be very expensive for companies to undertake that kind of investment. Really hope that will come in the next few months.
Well, that's why at this summit, we're pretty curiously watching to see what companies like FSD Africa will do. You say you'll be pioneering innovative finance for Africa's sustainable future at this summit. We earlier talked about the launch of the Pan-African Fund Managers Association today. So give us some more insight into how FSD especially plans to contribute to this new agenda with innovative financing.
Well, let's talk very quickly about the Pan-African Fund Managers Association, which is the idea that you're talking about. This was an idea that we had, that we basically collaborated with some of the private pension fund managers, in particularly Nigeria and Kenya, but now Botswana, Uganda, and in Ghana, about the idea that actually what we need to have is a Pan-African association of fund managers who can then share ideas and hopefully collaborate on actual transactions. And it seems incredible to think that actually such an entity doesn't really exist at the moment at all. And so when there are so many billions of dollars under fund management, under the management of these asset managers that are coming together in this new association, it could be actually a very powerful force. And so we wanted to essentially accelerate the investment that gets made through those kinds of entities by helping them share knowledge and build capacity in that way. The second way that we are contributing is actually by investing. So we have an investment arm called FSD Africa Investments, and they're actually making real investments. So we're putting our money where our mouth is. We are announcing our intention to invest in a fund called Acre Export Fund, which is, we're going to put £10 million into a fund that will leverage export guarantees from the developed economies and crowd in local funding into typically green infrastructure projects in Africa. That's a really exciting thing. I think the mobilization story, the capital mobilization story is really exciting on that. Right. But we're looking at other transactions as well. For example, Ethiopia is setting up a new stock exchange, and we've been supporting Ethiopia in that journey. It's been a great privilege and an honor to do that. And so the ESX, the Ethiopian Stock Exchange, is coming to Nairobi to talk to potential investors to raise capital for their new venture. Similarly, right at the other end of the scale, we are invested in a fund called the Catalyst Fund, which supports digital solutions for climate resilience. And so what we're trying to say is that wherever you are in the finance value chain, of green finance, whether it's at the smaller end, where it's all about access to finance and new ideas and household resilience, or whether it's right at the other end, where we're talking about capital market development, all of those stages of the finance value chain need innovation. We need to push boundaries to make the markets operate in a very different way to the way they're operating at the moment, because at the moment they're not working nearly well enough.
Quite right. And on that note, I wanted to get your take on the fact that we're seeing African countries advocating heavily for international financial architecture reforms at this summit. They want to see transformative programs that reshape financial systems for the betterment of the underserved populations here in Africa. So what are the realities that will come into play in achieving that particular goal? What is FSD's response to that?
Well, I mean, the core reality of all of this is that, much as African countries would want a lot more money, and they should be getting a lot more money, they were promised money and they're not getting it. But much as they want that money, and particularly money in the form of grants and risk capital, equity capital, not the debt that they're getting too much of at the moment, much as they want that money is not going to flow easily, partly because all over the world, economies are struggling with economic challenges, post-COVID economic challenges, and recessionary pressures, and inflation. And so it's just not that easy to get money out of some of those developed economies as we might wish. And I think one of the important sort of narrative shifts with this conference is that we want that, and we hope that will come, and we will continue to work with developed economies to make that happen. But actually, there's a real opportunity today, if we can get investment in Africa flowing, to address some of the problems that we think may never happen through just waiting for the developed economies to produce the kind of free money that we would like to see. So I think part of the narrative here is let's really start thinking much more about investment and the opportunity and the way that new businesses in Africa can leapfrog and actually contribute to a better climate in the future, and not worry so much and all the time about extracting money from the global north, because I think here there is so much that we can do together, and that requires policy reforms. It requires better transaction development, and it requires decent financial infrastructure. There's a lot that we can achieve. And actually, the prize, we think, could be significantly bigger than waiting for even quite large sums of money to come from the global north, as was promised.